Hello, everybody. Well, I guess it's about time to go ahead and get started with our office hours session today. Let me move one or two more things around. If you wouldn't mind, if you can see and hear me, if you wouldn't mind letting me know. Actually, I think I just lost my live stream. Where is... There we go. Okay. Now I'm back. Sorry about that. It's like I lost myself for a second. It was kind of strange. Okay. So welcome again for the second time. Sorry about that. And I had everything set up, everything was all ready to go. And then when I got started, I lost my browser and I lost all of you who are connected and fun. All right. So, but now I think I'm good. Thank you very much for someone's already giving me a mic and camera check. So I assume that all of you can hear me, which is good. Hear and see me, I guess. So thank you very much for joining me for my monthly office hour session for the Microsoft 365 full stack developer monthly office hour session. It's been a fairly quiet start to the year in terms of like news, especially when it comes from in the Microsoft 365 space. Haven't seen a whole lot of news, a whole lot of interesting stuff that's really worth kind of like diving into stuff that Microsoft has announced or new things generally in the 365 space. So between SharePoint Framework, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Graph, whatever. I mean, there are some things definitely I'll call out during my office hours, but I do want to make sure too that if you have any questions, I mean, this is a place for like office hours. If you have a question, I'd love it if you would go ahead and you post that question to the chat wherever you're watching this right now. The priority for those of you who are tuning in on one of the social media sites where I'm streaming this, the priority goes to my students who are connected to the office hours from my Voitanos Learn platform. So if you're a student, you got a question, if I get a bunch of questions here, your questions always bubble to the very top of all the questions I get during the office hours. So let's go ahead and let's dive into this. Now, usually we do these I do these every third Tuesday of the month. This month, though, it's a little bit different. I'm actually doing it on the fourth Tuesday because I had a conflict last week in teaching a workshop. I did a 2-week workshop on Teams app development, app and tab development. That was actually a lot of fun. It was like was able to do a bunch of demos that I haven't normally done in the past when I taught Teams, and actually still working on one or two more that I'm going to publish for all the students from last week that they can dive into, demos, homework assignments, or instructor-led demos where they can follow along as kind of like a hands-on lab based like example. So at any rate, let's go ahead and let's dive in. So real quick, for those of you who are new, my name is Andrew Connell. I've been in the SharePoint space, or I guess Microsoft 365 space, and what it was before that for over 21 years, or almost 25 years. It says I'm a 21-year MVP. I'm actually a 22-year MVP. I actually did my math wrong, and I've been finding 21 in lots of places that I had updated it last summer, and it looks like I've got one more even on my slides. So yeah, I started as an MVP back, I think, in 2005 as a content management server MVP. Then it was SharePoint MVP. Then it was Office 365 development, Office 365, Microsoft 365, Microsoft 365 development. It's pretty much kind of where I've been living in the last long time. I spent a lot of my time in the SharePoint Framework space, in the building custom solutions for Microsoft Teams, and that would include building apps or tabs that would live in personal apps or in channels or in group chats, custom meeting extensions, etc., bots, message extensions. And then also I do a lot of work around Microsoft 365 Copilot for developers, specifically in um, the more on the developer side. So building declarative agents using VS Code and the agents toolkit, but also just what can you do with like low code, no code solutions for extending Microsoft 365 Copilot. Copilot doesn't get, I guess I'll talk about, I'll get to the Copilot stuff a little bit later. I don't have a specific call out for it, but just the stuff that I've seen in the lieu of questions, stuff that I've seen that I'm happy to share with you. And then I also have SharePoint Embedded on there as well. I do also do some stuff with SharePoint Embedded. So I worked with Microsoft when they were first releasing it as a public preview and working on training materials and doing a multi-day in-person workshop for a bunch of their vendors. And anything in Azure and other Microsoft 365 stuff like Graph that is going to help me support those solutions. I've got a podcast called the Code Deploy Go Live podcast, dropping new episodes every 2 weeks, including one coming out tomorrow. And I've got a newsletter, a bi-weekly newsletter that I publish every second Tuesday, which the new installment is actually starting to flow right now. It's going out. It's actually going out as I publish this, as we're doing this live stream. Today's topic is about DOM manipulation in the SharePoint framework. So how Microsoft says DOM manipulation is not supported when I teach it, when I teach my customers, when I teach my students, when I work with my coaching clients, when I speak at a conference, when it comes up, I'm always like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But it's kind of like one of those do as I say, don't do as I do. And I share in the article how I look at DOM manipulation. And I do DOM manipulation with some stuff. I've got some custom stuff that I've built that I've shared with a few of my students recently and might kind of publish more of it depending on if there's interest. But more like administrative stuff for both administrators, but then also for developers and their tenant to kind of make it easier to kind of test stuff out and manage different things. If you got a question as we go through this, please feel free to post the questions in the chat. I'm going to run through a few things quick. If I see any questions pop up that are not like specific to what I'm talking about right now, then I will address those at the end. So speaking of that, what's my agenda? This is generally what I like to do. I go through some SharePoint framework stuff, then some team stuff, then some Copilot stuff, and then it's whatever questions you have, discussion items that you have that you'd love to that you would like to bring up. Let's see what I was going to say about this. Yeah, I think that's basically it. So I have a few things with SharePoint. I have nothing with team when it comes to announcements that I will share. But first, I do want to call out that next week is Microsoft is kicking off 25 years in SharePoint. They're calling it SharePoint at 25 or 25 years of SharePoint or SharePoint's 25th birthday. They have a digital event that's going to be a week next Monday. It's on March the 2nd. Anybody can register and tune in. That's the registration link. It's like an open, they're going to share a bunch of stuff. They're going to share like what you can, like a look back in the last 25 years. They're going to show like what the current story is with SharePoint. They're going to share, who knows, the way things are going. They're probably going to rename something. They are also going to talk about like kind of what you can expect, some stuff that's coming with SharePoint. So I believe we're going to see. I believe they're using this 25th birthday as also a way to announce some stuff as well. And then there'll also be like a live AMA to where you can ask questions as well. So you can register using that QR code or using the Microsoft short link that you see there on the slide. I think it's also going to live stream to YouTube. So if you don't register, I mean, you'll still be able to get to it. But regardless, they're trying to encourage everybody to register. So I'm just going to tell you, you should register, but in reality, I don't think it matters. Okay, so there's that one. At the same time, they're also kicking off their annual hackathon, a SharePoint hackathon. This, you can learn more about it at that link or that QR code. They take you to the same place. And there is it shows, the hackathon lasts for 2 weeks. There are some live sessions that go on during the 2 weeks. And they will, during the live sessions, they will also show different topics. You can see them all listed in the agenda listed from that link or from the QR code or link or whatever. And then you'll find out, get some information on what's available for what categories are available for you to submit something. There are prizes involved for people who win. I believe the winning person or team is going to get I think it's a Microsoft 365 like Copilot laptop or Surface laptop or Surface Copilot laptop, something like that. I don't know if you can have like up to 1 to 4 people on a team. I don't know if that means there's 4 of them that'll go to everybody on the team, or if the 4 people have to go through and cut it in half and then cut the screen in half and the keyboard in half and then share all 4 pieces. Not really sure how that's all set up, but there's all the information you'll see there is on the there. So come and join us. Should be a lot of fun. All right, so now let's get into some of the news here. So I want to cover some stuff that I think you should be aware of leading into the next few months. I showed this during my January office hours. I'll probably show it again in March. We have in April is the great retirement for some services that have been around for a very long time and were announced that they were being retired back almost 2 years ago. All right. So the 4 services, 3 of them are like a triangle of dependencies. So SharePoint 2013 workflows are being retired. There is no migration path. They will be completely shut off. If they will stop, all the infrastructure that runs them will be shut off. So if you have any workflows you've built, like with SharePoint Designer 2013, they will stop on April the 2nd. Not April the 1st, it's not a joke, but it will stop on April the 2nd. So you need to get those things migrated. Another thing that is going to get shut off is the SharePoint hosted part of Azure Access Control Services, or Azure ACS. This has been retired by Azure for a long time, but the service has still been there because SharePoint had some dependencies. It was going to take them longer to make that migration or to get off of it. The app model that we had that was introduced in 2013, and the support for like intra ID and using more of an app-based model instead of using the ACS model for having apps in SharePoint, or like creating an app registration in SharePoint to grant it permissions, has replaced ACS. ACS is going to be fully shut off on April the 2nd. That is one of the big things that's actually going to kill workflows, because when ACS is shut off, workflows they depend on ACS. In addition, the SharePoint add-in model. So SharePoint hosted add-ins, provider hosted add-ins, all of the infrastructure related to those will also be shut off on April the 2nd. So in other words, they will simply just stop working. If you have add-ins that are deployed in your tenant, they will flat out stop working. You need to make sure that you have migrated all the solutions that you want to migrate. The most logical path to migration is going to the SharePoint framework, but that doesn't mean that it has to be the SharePoint framework. It means that you may have a solution that makes more sense as an Azure function, a scheduled Azure function that runs and that authenticates with Graph to do some stuff. Lots of different things. There's a couple of different paths that you can go down with respect to replacing your add-ins. It just depends on what they are. So if you need help with any of this stuff and what the paths are, that's something that I do. You can reach out to me. I do various options there. I've got courses related to the SharePoint framework. Feel free to ask your questions in the office hours right now. Post them in the office hour chat, or jump into my the sessions that I do on office hour sessions, or you can enroll in one of my SharePoint framework courses, or reach out to me, and I do private coaching and great engagements or like fractional stuff on a retainer basis, where I come in and help inventory and help come up with a plan on how we can migrate and what the work effort's going to look like. Finally, the last thing that is not related to any of the other ones, but it is also retiring, is our SharePoint isolated web parts. Isolated web parts was giving us a way to address the lack of being able to grant or assign permissions to a SharePoint framework solution, a package, um, in the SharePoint framework that have been developed with the SharePoint framework. So without isolated web parts, when you grant a solution a permission, let's say it's mail.read or mail.write on Microsoft Graph, that permission is actually granted to SharePoint Online, the entire tenant, not your solution. There's no tie between your solution and that permission. So that when your app says, I need an access token to talk to Microsoft Graph, the SharePoint Framework API reaches out to SharePoint Online on the server. SharePoint Online authenticates with Enter ID as SharePoint Online and says, I need all of the permissions or scopes that have been granted to SharePoint Online in an access token. Entra will give it back that access token, and then SharePoint Online gives it back to my SharePoint Framework web part. What does that mean? That means that my web part or my extension or whatever gets every permission that has been granted to SharePoint Online, right? So when you grant a permission, anybody can use that permission on your intranet. Now, granted, I mean, if you're doing delegated permissions, you may say, well, it's not that big of a deal because not only the app is going to have the permission, but so does the user. That's true. Some companies still aren't really cool with that. So what Microsoft did back in the day is they introduced isolated web parts, which is, instead of web parts being rendered in a div, which is going to use the exact same host name, DNS host name, as the rest of your SharePoint tenant, the iframe option will render your web parts or load them where the host name is dynamic or is different per app, per SharePoint Framework app, and it is mapped to its own Intra ID app. You can grant permission just to that Intra ID app for that for your solution. But Microsoft said, nope, sorry, we're not doing it anymore. Goodbye, we're done. So they deprecated it about a year or two ago, and it's fully going away in April. They said originally that, hey, we're going to have a solution here, going to make your life a little bit easier with something we're going to introduce. And as far as I know, I mean, that they never followed up on that. They said that they were working on it, but I think that working on it meant that somebody was just talking about it, because it looks like there is nothing coming with it. So my solution for this, for customers are like, I don't want to get all my access. I don't want to get everything access. Instead, my solution to that is to create your own Intra ID app, have your own API that you grant SharePoint Online permissions to call your API, and then your API through business logic can say, what am I allowed to do, or who's allowed to do it, because the token that gets from SharePoint is going to include the current user's details in it. And so in your app, you can then control, like, this user has access to do XYZ, and it will do XYZ, I guess. So the way that you end up doing this then is that you basically have an intermediary that you call, but it allows you to have a little bit more granular control than granting permission to all of SharePoint Online, like to Microsoft Graph or some other Intra ID based application in SharePoint Online. Okay, so that's SharePoint retirement stuff that's coming up. Let's talk about SharePoint Framework. I got no news for you guys. Sorry about this. So the last release that we had actually was in January, but it was just a point release, and it just updated some of the dependencies so that they can keep like that NPM audit report down to the minimum. So it's 1.22.2. The big change with 1.22 was which was released in early December 2025, is that they made a massive change to the build toolchain. They got rid of the task runner that we were using, Gulp, and they replaced it with Heft. Right? Heft is part of something called the Rush stack, although that really doesn't matter in the case of the SharePoint Framework. They replaced it with Heft, and yeah, that's basically it. Right? So nothing new there since that release. All right. So you can learn more about that at that link. I have it there on the far right-hand side of the slide. They did have a update they published for the January roadmap. It's still the same as what we were looking at before. They were saying February, March I've been saying Q1. I'll still be a little surprised if this actually happens in March. But what they've said that is coming, which is quite a lot, is they were going to open source the Yeoman templates, which I don't really think that's what they mean. In fact, I've actually gotten some clarification on this. This kind of doubles in, this kind of goes in with the second bullet point I have here on the new open source CLI. So what they're doing is they're moving from using Yeoman for the project creation of SPFx projects. They're moving to a command line interface, and which is what Yeoman is, but it's just not using Yeoman. This CLI is going to give us more of a way to create our SharePoint Framework projects and add components to it. Basically, it's going to replace what we currently do with Yeoman. But one of the nice things they've said they're going to do with this is they are going to open source the project templates. And they're also, we'll see, if they're also going to give us the ability to use our own templates as well, our own project templates. So if you don't like the fact that every time you create a web part using React, you get a class component, maybe we'll have a way to change that. They also said there's going to be not comment set improvements. This should be command set improvements. So that's another thing that they're going to be updating. This is giving us the ability to have like groups, so like a subgroup of options in a command set. This is also a little interesting here. I'm curious if this happens because the new UI for the document library stuff seems to have broken a lot of things, including how command sets are shown. And it looks, they got a lot of negative feedback on the document library update, especially when it comes to SPFx customizations. And I would be surprised if we see some changes to this in the next month or so. New and edit panel overrides are coming, they say, which is basically the ability for us to modify when you go to create a new item on a list, or it shows up like a panel on the right-hand side instead of like a whole page. We've been able to do full form customizations, but they say that they're actually going to give us a way to do this also with our, they're going to do it with edit panels as well that slide in. So we'll see. Still haven't seen anything on that, so we'll have to see. The debugging toolbar might be by now. What this was is a new toolbar that shows up. There's some good stuff on it. Actually, a link that I've got here on the roadmap. There's a video demonstrating it on their YouTube channel. I think it's Microsoft Community Learning, is what the name of the channel is, where Bert and Vesta from Microsoft show this developer toolbar off. It's got a few nice things to it. The goal of it is really to kind of replace what we have on the SharePoint Online hosted workbench, but that hosted workbench is going away eventually. They've basically said that they're not doing much with it, and most people want to end up using real SharePoint pages to test with. So it's a change we'll see. So you can learn more about that from this roadmap thing. They talk about what's in the next update in Q2. It says navigation customizer plus more. Well, I mean, just have to see. I'd like this. I don't put much stock into release too far in advance with SharePoint Framework. They say we can trust them more, but I'd like to see more before I say yes, I trust you. Oh my gosh, so look at that. I'm already doing the slides. All right, cool. So a couple of things I want to just kind of call out here. I've seen it's been a fairly quiet start to the year for really all of December, January, and February when it comes to Microsoft 365 news. Haven't seen a whole lot of stuff come out. I've seen stuff that's been on the negative side that has been raising alarm with customers. So I mentioned the document library stuff was a thing that a lot of people were that impacted a lot of people, and they were really frustrated about. And even just last week, apparently they deprecated a endpoint on the client-side object model on the CSOM. I think it was called the Git search crawl log endpoint, and there's an associated PNP PowerShell commandlet called the Git crawl log or Git search crawl log, and it would allow you to see like what things were crawled, um, on your SharePoint tenant to make sure it's getting crawled. This is used a lot by people who do migrations to make sure that the content that they're migrating into SharePoint is actually getting indexed. But because apparently a lot of times, this is kind of news to me, as I don't really do migrations, but from what I understood was people who did do it, what they found was a lot of things that they would run into. The things they would run into is that the crawl service or that does the indexing was not working or was way behind or hung up on their tenant, and they used this in the associated PowerShell commandlet to be able to show proof to Microsoft support that, hey, something's wrong. You need to go restart our crawl log or our crawl process. Well, last week they deprecated this endpoint, but more importantly, they didn't really give anybody any warning for this because technically you can still call it, but it doesn't return any data. So effectively, they just retired it out of the blue, and it's pissed off a lot of people. There is a search API that you can use to go run queries, but that's not as good as what the crawl log was, because the crawl log showed that content was being indexed. Search is saying, is it in the index? But if it wasn't crawled, that's what people needed to see. And apparently on the search side, it would not give you the same information. So I saw this pop up, I guess, late last week on LinkedIn. Somebody posted about it. Somebody brought it to my attention, pointed me to the post. Frankly, I didn't really get it when I saw it because it was, I never used this thing, so I never heard of it. I mean, a lot of stuff is in Microsoft 365 that not all of us used or even heard of because there's a lot of stuff in there that stuff that a lot of us don't even use. Depending on what our focus is. Like me as a developer, I don't do migration work, right? So I'm not surprised I wasn't aware of it. But just like stuff with different APIs I work with, a lot of people who do migrations probably aren't even aware of it, of the stuff that I do, or the stuff that I use. So anyway, I saw it. A lot of people started getting really upset about it. I posted about it or reposted something about it on LinkedIn yesterday, and based on the reaction, got kind of a confirmation that, yeah, this is getting under the skin of quite a few people. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of it. I haven't seen much else when it comes to stuff that's been reported, either across SharePoint, across Teams, across Graph. The one thing that I've seen that I guess has been a little frustrating to me is it sure looks like there's a lot of like turmoil on the Copilot side. Like there's a lot of things that like or at least for developers. Like when I went over to, I've spent a lot of time last year working on TypeScript and using it to build declarative agents. It's my preferred way of building a declarative agent using the Agents Toolkit. It's apparently Microsoft's preferred way of doing it as well. But after they released the TypeScript extension for M365 Copilot, they released it version 1. I found a couple bugs. I talked to the team that actually did it. They acknowledged that, yeah, that's a bug. We got to fix that. And there's been nothing for 2 months, over 2 months now, almost 3 months. So it's kind of like, is this still a thing? I mean, if you release V1, you don't even, they could go radio silent on it after the bugs are filed and you acknowledge them and say you're working on it. Like, can we trust you? Like, can we be confident in this? So I don't know. I think I'm kind of I'm personally in this space right now. I'm curious where you guys are on this. It's not that I don't have confidence in using the stuff that I teach, like building apps for Microsoft Teams or building agents for Copilot or building stuff like SharePoint Framework. I mean, SharePoint Framework is very popular still. I mean, you see the usage graphs that Microsoft shares in their community, their biweekly community meeting. You still see those charts going up and to the right and showing, I guess it's like that for you guys. I still see a lot of that. So there's still a lot of adoption going and growth. And I know that they've got some big investments that are working on associated with it. But I mean, you just don't see like when it comes to a lot of the other stuff. I've got to. It's almost like Microsoft is their only. It's not like I guess it's almost like this. From my perception, from my perspective, it looks like Microsoft is single track minded, focused just on AI, and nothing else matters. I put something on LinkedIn yesterday where that it is. I watch the message center announcements closely in Microsoft 365, and I feel like I see the word deprecated or retired more than something new being introduced. And I mean, I get stuff gets deprecated, stuff gets retired. I get that. But what the trend I'm seeing more of is that stuff is getting cut, like deprecated, retired, with very little notice, either going straight to retired and going away, or being deprecated with a very short timeline before it gets fully retired. I mean, we went from 2 years with add-ins and web parts, and then we saw stuff with like was it something called like live rooms or live meetings and API that was just getting killed like within a couple of weeks of when it was announced. So the time frame is getting much shorter. There's more stuff that's getting cut and deprecated, and the stuff that I see them shipping that's new just feels like it's like half thought through, not fully tested. They ship it, customers get pissed. Microsoft kind of acts like they were surprised, but they didn't. People weren't aware of it, like the whole document library thing that went on. So I don't know. I mean, little discouraged. I'm pretty disappointed in them, and I think it'll be. I'm really curious to see this SharePoint 25 event next week, and to kind of see what people are saying about what they see, because I think that there's a good sentiment of customers that are a little frustrated, and that Microsoft is kind of thinking that everything's all sunshine and rainbows and puppies and stuff, kittens and everything. Everything's good. But I don't know. We'll see. Of course, it's not unique to them. It's across the industry as well. That overinvestment in AI and everything. So we'll just see. We'll see. Okay, that's everything I wanted to cover. That was 30 minutes of it. I don't want to extend this in case just for the heck of it. So if you've got a question, please feel free to post it. I only have one question here, so I'll go ahead and address this one. Although this will go unfortunately really fast, so I'd love to hear it. I love your insight. So Stephen over on LinkedIn posted. Stephen asked, "What about using NAN with Power Automate for things Power Automate cannot do?" To be honest with you, again, on the developer stuff, this is more of a developer-oriented office hours, and I'm just going to put my hat on. I'm a developer. I do not use Power Automate. I'm familiar with NAN, and yeah, I mean, I think that if Power Automate isn't doing something and NAN has the ability to do something that you can't do, and it's great for like AI-based workloads. Think of it like an AI. I think of it as like an AI version of like Zapier. Maybe you can say AI version of like Power Automate. But a lot of people, it's very popular outside of Microsoft. And the nice thing is that a lot of Microsoft services are exposed using Microsoft Graph, and they're all exposed. Their authentication stuff is all set up using OAuth 2 for authentication. So I know you can do that with NAN. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. But then again, of course, the devil's in the details. Is there like licensing stuff that you have to deal with? I don't know. I mean, maybe. So would I have an issue with that? Absolutely not. Not at all. Personally, I'm not a fan of Power Automate. I don't find it very reliable. I mean, I have trouble like keeping my stuff running. Even hired a vendor to come in and actually build some Power Automate flows for me, and after like 2-3 months, they'd break, and I'd reconnect them, and they would break, and they'd reconnect them, break them. It's ridiculous. So I don't know. I don't think Power Automate or Power Apps are really an enterprise solution to feel proof of concept thing. That's my 2 cents. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. But to me, I don't find it to be an enterprise solution. I think that those tools are good for small groups of people building stuff a small audience, but for like an enterprise solution, I'm not sold. I think, I mean, especially Powerhouse is incredibly slow with its reliance on like data. Just my 2 cents. Okay, hope that helps. Alina, I saw you join, and I was wondering, I have not forgotten about you. So, Alina had a question here, said, is there any updates on my problem with the SharePoint Framework library, which is not referenced properly after updating the toolchain? So, the problem that Alina is talking about was when you're developing a library component using the SharePoint Framework, that there's a way to go through and test it out with the web part when you're doing stuff locally. It's not anything unique to the SharePoint Framework. The concept of how it works is the same if you were building a package, an NPM package, and you want to test it in something local. The problem that I was trying to do was related to the fact that it was working when she was using the Gulp toolchain, but then upgrading to the Heft toolchain, it was not working. I've had 2 of those questions in the last week, and so so 2 things. 1, I haven't forgotten about you, and 2, no one will update. And the reason why is because I had some stuff related to the workshop that I was teaching the last 2 weeks that has tied me up. I planned to do this last Friday, and I was planning on addressing that, going through it and testing it, running through it last week on Friday after my workshop. And again, was thinking to try and get into it this week. And to be completely honest, I had a personal thing come up. Everything's fine. But I had like a scheduled surgery that was weirder than I thought it was expected to be. So it kind of knocked me down a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. And I'm still today trying to wrap up everything with that workshop. So you're like top of my list. It's still sitting. I email myself sitting at the top of my inbox. It boomerangs back to me every morning. So I will definitely take a look at it and address and see if I can figure out what's going on, or at least try and replicate what you're seeing. I haven't looked at it yet. So what I'm about to say, you could totally dismiss this. The reason why I didn't want to go too far in trying to explain stuff is, number 1, you and somebody else both asked the same question the same week. So that kind of was like, that's interesting. Why 2 people have the same issue? The other thing that I was going to bring up with it was, it doesn't make sense to me why changing the toolchain should have any impact on it, because the toolchain doesn't have anything to do with the SharePoint. Doesn't have anything to do with this concept of NPM link. Like if I was building an NPM package and using it in another node-based project that's not using Gulp or not using Heft, we use the same concept of the whole use NPM link to kind of simulate doing a global install of a package I got from a remote registry. And the fact that we're changing between Gulp and Heft, I don't think that shouldn't matter. Although the devil's in the details, right? So that's why I want to go there and try it out. So a couple of things that I'd just be curious about is, are the 2 projects both on the same version of the SharePoint framework? Are you using the same version of Node? Which I would assume so if you got 2 different projects. The other thing I was going to say was, I don't think that it should matter, but are they both using the Heft toolchain, or is one using Gulp and one using Heft? I don't know. So you're not alone. I have not forgotten about you, and I will follow up with you. Try creating 2 new projects, and it didn't work there either. Okay, that's also what I was trying to do. I'm planning on going back to the sample that I had in the course and upgrading those 2 projects to Heft. Well, first of all, doing it in Gulp, make sure all that works, and then go through and upgrade them in Heft, and everything is Heft, and everything else is server. Okay, I will definitely. That helps to know to see what you're doing. So, I promise I will I don't have a reason why I'm not able to get back to you this week. I'm out all day starting on Friday through Monday doing a long weekend. I turned 50 years old on this weekend. I'm going with my wife for a fun weekend, but yeah, I should be able to get this done. SharePoint's 25, and I turned 50. So I mean, half my life I've been doing SharePoint. That was a little bit of that's depressing, or whatever. Um, Heft actually, so Heft, the building of stuff isn't really different. Right? So I see what you just said. So Lance said, I suppose the Heft builds the package differently. I mean, kinda, but not really, because all Heft does is it is being used to create. Well, in this specific part, Heft is being used to create the Webpack configuration, and then it runs Webpack, passing in that Webpack configuration. Webpack then goes through and builds the bundle. Right? So TypeScript does the compilation, Heft calls that, and then Heft goes through and through a series of plugins, checks the Webpack configuration, and then calls Webpack, and then Webpack goes through and does the bundle, and generating the manifests and all that kind of stuff. Gulp did the exact same thing. The creation of like the bundle and the SharePoint specific stuff when it came, Heft was doing about building this manifest, those were all been implemented as Webpack plugins. And we're using, my understanding is we're using the same plugins that we use in Gulp that we're using also in Heft. So the only thing that's different is the thing that's running, right? And then starting them up. And that's either Gulp or Heft. So who's the task runner? That's the part that to me says this shouldn't matter. And the fact that we're using npm link, all that is just like that's just a standard node and npm thing. So to me, I look at it like, why are you seeing this? Why would this change impact anything when it seems like everything that's specific about library components in the SharePoint framework has nothing to do really that you're running into. This part of it has nothing to do with the SharePoint framework. And so, or Gulp or Heft, or even Webpack. And so to me, I'm like, why are you seeing this? Like, what's going on? And to be honest, I don't know. We just need to test it out. That's why I was like, let me go through and let me play with it before I say too much here. So I'm just being more candid now. Like when I saw your response, that was everything was going through my head. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go test this stuff out and go see it, try and replicate it and see what's going on. There's got to be a reason. So if I can't replicate it, then I may ask you if you can do it. If you want, in the meantime, if you can give me if you can create a public GitHub repo and you can and update your question that you have in our community, in the student community, create a public repo or two, put the project or both projects in there with it. Like, here's what I've done to go test it out, and here's what I see with a screenshot or the text that you see and everything was breaking, just to make sure that there's not something that I'm missing or what. So you've built a library component in the past, you built a SharePoint framework report in the past, you've got them to work together. So you clearly know how to do it. It's just that I want to try and replicate what you're seeing and be like, why is this happening? So, and then all the other content stuff, version of SharePoint framework, node version, etc., all that stuff. All that would help is just being able to having a repro that I can base it off of. I don't expect to get to it today or tomorrow morning, based on what I've got on my plate. So we'll see. But I will do my best to get something to respond this week to you, at least with a where am I? Okay. I see one person saying that the audio is cutting out a lot on YouTube. It's curious. I'm not seeing that. I'm getting great connections to everything. I don't know if you guys that are listening to this on Voitanos Learn, if you're hearing anything, if the audio is cutting out at all on you. But for the other places being streamed, it's all being simulcast. So I have two streams going out like I always do with this. One is going to a platform called Circle, which is what my student community is on, Voitanos Learn. And then one is going to something called StreamYard, which then from there streams it out to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So StreamYard tells me the connection is healthy, everything looks good. And people, I just see that Alina's saying on Voitanos Learn that everything is good there too. So I'm sorry about that, Garish. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Alina. Your name's familiar. I feel like you're. I was trying. I don't have a picture of you in the on your profile, but like your name's familiar from somebody. I feel like I met like at a conference in the past. So I was trying to place you like when I saw your name pop up again last week. So all right. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap? I got another 14 minutes here, but I don't want to just keep it. Just keep it. No reason. Tell you what, if I don't get another question by 10 minutes till the top of the hour, then I will. Okay, Ellen, you say we met at a conference. The one that stuck in my head was the one in London. I think it was called like, it was either, I know it was Evolutions at one point, but I think it was also something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was like that. It was at the conference center that's right at the I do remember. Okay, cool. Yeah, the one that was like right next to Westminster Abbey, Parliament Square in London. Yep. Okay, I am remembering this now. SharePoint Evolution. Wow, 10 years ago. I bet we're both going like this. 10 years. That was always a great conference. I love that. I will ask this, because we got some people here. Anybody going to any events coming up in the first half of the year? I will be at I think it's called AgentCon, which is the global AI, part of the global AI thing. That is an event that's going on in New York City in early March. I will be there. I will be at the Orlando Microsoft 365 Community Conference in April. And I will be at the European Collaboration Summit in Cologne, Germany in early May. So I'm just curious if that's going anywhere. It was a small crowd today. I'm starting to wonder if these office hours are, if people are interested in this. I do office hours once a month, but I also don't, like 10 people showing up or a few people showing up. I'm starting to wonder, is this a good use of all our time? So I don't know. Love your feedback on it. All right. Well, I said it would go for 2 more minutes until the top of the hour, but nobody's asking any questions, which is perfectly fine. I'm actually seeing people. So 1 more minute. All right. Tell you what, I'm going to wrap it up. I will have another office hours in March. It'll be, I do have a slide for that. It is actually going to be at the end of March, March 31st, because I can't do it the 3rd week of March because I think that's when the Microsoft MVP Global Summit is over at Microsoft, the Microsoft headquarters. So I won't be able to do all my office hours then. But I'll be doing it the following week. So keep an eye on that. What else I got? Oh, I've got something. I will have something to share with you on that during that office hours as well. I have a big change that's coming to Voitanos in the next month or two. If plans work out, it'll be before April, but it'll definitely be going on. It'll definitely be happening in a month or two. Big new offering that I'm excited and want to work towards, working with somebody, making a lot of progress on it. And I'm looking forward to sharing it with everyone next soon. So if you want to learn more about it, if you stay on the newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, I will end Voitanos Learn. I'll make sure to know about that, make you aware of it. And then furthermore, I also have another workshop coming up on with my declarative agents for 365 Copilot coming in April. All right. So playing with the idea of actually extending it and making it a little bit longer with some more content and more stuff to cover. And if I do that, anybody who's registered for it will just kind of be grandfathered in. If I do it, the price will definitely go up. But everybody will be grandfathered in who is already registered for it. So thinking through that, I'm early stages of thinking through that and deciding if that's something that I think would be appealing to people, but it is definitely something that's on the table right now. All right. Okay. That's it. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I'll go ahead and call it. Thank you very much for joining me for my monthly office hours here for February 2026. And I will see everybody in about a month at the end of March. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming today.